One of the key questions that is coming up as you're reading this novel by Philip K. Dick, Ubik, is, well, what is Ubik? It's kind of a nonsense term. You could say, well, it's short for ubiquity or ubiquitous, that is being everywhere at once. That kind of plays a bit of a role in it, particularly when we're looking at the very final portion, the final discussion of it in the last chapter. But that's not actually how it's being described effectively throughout the story. And the main people that are involved with it are Joe Chip, our main character of the entire thing, and then Glenn Runciter, who will be giving him some Ubik, but who, as it's going to turn out, it has a rather pragmatic approach to it. He's not actually sure what it is. Interestingly, though, it's going to come from somebody very close to him. So we effectively begin in chapter 10 when Joe Chip is encountering Runciter on a television set that has come on by itself and gone to a channel by itself. So Runciter is there, and he says, tired of lazy taste buds? Has boiled cabbage taken over your world of food? That same old flat, stale Monday morning odor, no matter how many dimes you put into your stove? Ubik changes all of that. Ubik wakes up food flavor, puts hearty taste back where it belongs, and restores fine food smell. Now, let's pause on that for a moment. So there's all these advertisements throughout the work that we've discussed elsewhere, and it seems like Ubik is kind of a general catch-all good thing to jazz stuff up, to make it better. And he goes on and says, one invisible puff, puff, whisk of economically priced Ubik banishes, now notice what he's going to say next, obsessive, compulsive fears that the entire world is turning into clotted milk, worn-out tape recorders, and obsolete iron cage elevators, plus other further as yet unglimpsed manifestations of decay. So he's talking to Joe about the things that Joe or Al has encountered. He goes on to say, you see, world deterioration of this regressive type is a normal experience of many half-lifers, especially in the early stages when ties to the real reality are still very strong. A sort of lingering universe is retained as a residual charge, experienced as a pseudo-environment, but highly unstable and unsupported by any ergic substructure. This is particularly true when several memory systems are fused, as in the case of you people. But with today's new, more powerful than ever Ubik, all of this is changed. So he is describing the situation that Joe and his fellow inertial team people, all killed in Cold Pack now and Half-Life together, are experiencing. This running down of things that we're going to see later on is due to this world being not sustainable. So Joe is watching, and then a cartoon fairy zips airily in spirals, squirting Ubik here and there. A hard-eyed housewife with big teeth and horse's chin replaced the cartoon fairy. In a brassy voice, she bellowed, I came over to Ubik after trying weak, out-of-date reality supports. So this is a commercial about reality. My pots and pans were turning into heaps of rust. The floors of my Connept were sagging. My husband Charlie put his foot right through the bedroom door. But now I use economical, new, powerful today's Ubik, and with miraculous results. Look at this refrigerator. She's going to demonstrate it to us. On screen appeared an ancient turret-top GE refrigerator. Why, it's devolved back 80 years. 62 years, Joel corrected reflexively. But now look at it, and she's spraying it. Sparkles of magic light lit up in a nimbus surrounding the old turret top, and in a flash, a modern 6-door pay refrigerator replaced it in splendid glory. And then Runciter comes back. Making use of the most advanced techniques of present-day science, the reversion of matter to earlier forms can be reversed, and at a price any Conapt owner can afford. Ubik is sold by leading home art stores throughout Earth. Do not take internally, as we see there's all these warnings. Keep away from open flame. Do not deviate from printed procedural approaches as expressed on label. So look for it, Joe. Don't just sit there. Go out and buy a can of Ubik and spray it around you night and day. So Joe is going to start talking back to Runciter, and it turns out that Runciter is, according to him, on a videotape that he recorded for him, and Joe is going to ask him at this point, what is this Ubik? And Runciter is not going to give him a straight answer because Runciter is not actually responding to Joe. Joe says, what is Ubik made of? How does it work? So he's not going to get any real information. But he does know that he can go to his apartment and get a can of it, a free sample of Ubik. He says, that's what the TV commercial urged me to do. I'll be safer carrying a can of Ubik with me, as the ad pointed out in its own jingly, clever way. But what ends up happening when he gets there, it turns out that the Ubik has unfortunately regressed. And it's no longer Ubik in the spray can. Instead, it is Ubik liver and kidney balm, a blue glass jar with a large lid, and it's a unique analgesic formula developed by Edward Sonderbar, right? So it's not the same product, and it's not going to be helpful for Joe. And we see Runciter himself spraying Joe with Ubik. When Joe is near dying, he makes it up the stairs, he makes it into the hotel room. Runciter strode in 3 big steps to the door, slammed and bolted it, came at once back to Joe. Opening a drawer of the vanity table, he hastily brought out a spray can with bright stripes, balloons, and lettering glorifying its shiny surfaces. Ubik, Runciter said. He shook the can mightily, then stood before Joe, aiming at him. Don't thank me for this, he said, then sprayed prolongedly left and right. The air flickered and shimmered as if bright particles of light had been released, as if the sun's energy sparkled here in this worn-out, elderly hotel room. Feel better? It should work on you right away. You should already be getting a reaction. And Joe does get a reaction. He does feel incredibly better. He, was close to dying of fatigue, of cold, oldness, and now he's restored, right? So now he is going to ask Runciter again, because he's got the actual guy in chapter 14, well, what is Ubik? And Runciter doesn't actually know. Right? And he's going to tell Joe, I'm not dead, unfortunately. You are. You're going through this normal decay of half-life, and, Ubik can save you from that. He says, in your case, I got Ubik. I got you the Ubik. Joe says, well, what is Ubik? There was no answer from Runciter. Joe says, well, you don't know that either. You don't know what it is or why it works. So 2 really important questions, 2 W questions. What is Ubik? This is a mystery that we're going to encounter. How does it work? Runciter doesn't have an answer. He knows that it does work if you spray people with it. It doesn't work in the other forms, but he's not sure about anything else. Where does it come from? Who made it? These are important questions. And so he says, you're right, Joe. Absolutely right. I wanted to save your life. That part's true. I'd like to save all your lives. And they talk a little bit about being in cold pack. And Joe says, none of us even know who it is that's destroying us, who it is that's protecting us. You outside don't know, and we in here don't know. Maybe it's Pat. They are going to find out it's not Pat. But Ubik is from the helping force in some way. Clearly, it's something good for them, right? So we move on to chapter 15. It turns out Ubik can do something else. So the person who's presenting himself as Don Denny, one of the final members of the team who's not dead, Joe actually says to him, why won't you use the Ubik on yourself? And he says, hell, Joe, we're going to die. You know it, and I know it. After I saw Pat's condition, I went into the other room. That's when I saw the rest of them, of us. That's why it took so long in getting here. Joe says, okay, use the Ubik. It'll save you. Or I'll use it on you. Don Denny picked up the can, shook it, pointed the nozzle towards himself, and says, okay, if that's what you want. There isn't really any reason not to. This is the end. They're all dead. Only you and I are left, and the Ubik is going to wear off of you in a few hours. And after he sprays himself, what do we find? The person standing there in the center, the vaporizing stain of Ubik that had saturated the worn and dingy carpet, was not Don Denny, an adolescent boy mawkishly slender with irregular black button eyes beneath tangled brows. He's Jory. He is the one who is behind all of this dying that's taking place. It wasn't Pat Conley. And, while Joe is protected by the Ubik, Jory can't actually do anything, but he says, the Ubik's going to wear off. Now, that means that Joe has to find more Ubik. So where is he going to get this? In chapter 16, Joe is starting to wind down again, and he meets a girl, a woman, and she says, I'm not a deformation of Jory. I'm not like him. Here, Mr. Chip. She brought out an envelope which she passed him. This is for you. Open it right away. I don't think either of us should have delayed so long. So he opens the envelope, and what does he find inside? A certificate, stately and ornamented. The printing on it swam. What's it say? He asked her, laying it down on his lap. From the company that manufactures Ubik, the girl said, it is a guarantee, Mr. Chip, of a free lifetime supply. Free because I know of your problem regarding money, or shall we say idiosyncrasy, and on a list, a reverse of all the drugstores which carry it. 2 drugstores, and not abandoned ones, in Des Moines are listed. I suggest we go to one first before we eat dinner. So they go to the drugstore. Jory is already there pretending to be the pharmacist, and what do we actually see? Well, all the Ubik in the shop has unfortunately been regressed. And, what does that mean? Now, it's interesting. Actually, Joe pointed out this irony beforehand. The thing that's supposed to prevent regression or remedy it itself gets regressed and turns out not to be useful. What are you going to do, right? So Joe actually tries to do something about this in the pharmacy. He says he concentrated on the blue jar of liver and kidney balm. Evolve forward, he said to it, flooding it with his need. He poured whatever energy he had left into the container. It did not change. This is the regular world, he said to it. Spray can, he said aloud. He shut his eyes, resting. Jory says, it's not a spray can, Mr. Chip. And finally, Joe tries again. You are a spray can. This is 1992, and tried to exert everything. He put the entirety of himself into the effort. And the pharmacist says, come on, Mr. Chip, time to go home. She was wrong. You won't see her again. This is the end. And Joe says, what I hold here is a spray can. And the pharmacist says, no, I'm sorry, Mr. Chip, I really am, but it's not. So it looks as if we're at the end. But then, what do we discover? He leaves, and another girl, who Runciter is going to tell him is named Myra, she shows up, and he says, who sent you? Dr. Sandabar, the younger Dr. Sandabar, son of Dr. Sandabar, the founder. And he says, who's that? The name meant nothing to him. Then he remembered where he'd seen it. The liver and kidney man, processed oleander leaves, oil of peppermint, charcoal, cobalt, chloride, zinc oxide. And the girl says, by making use of the most advanced techniques of modern day science, the reversion of matter to earlier forms can be reversed. The formula that Runciter had used. And at a price any Conapt owner can afford, Ubik is sold by leading home art stores throughout Earth. So look at the place that you shop, Mr. Chip. And he's like, look for it where? I'm dying here. And so he says, you're from 1992. What you said came from that commercial. And she says, yes, you brought me from the future by what you did there inside the drugstore. You summoned me directly from the factory. Mr. Chip, I could spray it on you if you're too weak to. Shall I? I'm an official factory representative and technical consultant. I know how to apply it. She took the package from his trembling hands, tearing it open, and sprayed him with Ubik. In the dusk, he saw the spray can glint. He saw the happy-colored lettering. Thanks, he said after a time, after he felt better and warmer. The girl said, you didn't need as much this time as you did in the hotel room. You must be stronger than before. Here, take the can of it. You might need it before morning. And Joe says, can I get more when this runs out? And she says, evidently so. If you got me here once, I would assume you can get me here again the same way. Now, that has solved his problem, it seems. But now we want to know the answers to these questions that he's been asking Runciter. So he says, what is Ubik? And she says, a spray can of Ubik is a portable negative ionizer with a self-contained high-voltage low-amp unit powered by a peak gain helium battery of 25 kilovolts. The negative ions are given a counterclockwise spin by a radically biased acceleration chamber, which creates a centripetal tendency to them so that they cohere rather than dissipate. A negative ion field diminishes the velocity of antiprotophasons normally present in the atmosphere. As soon as their velocity falls, they cease to be antiprotophasons, and under the principle of parity, can no longer unite with protophasons radiated from persons frozen in cold pack. That is, those in half-life. The end result is that the proportion of protophasons not canceled by antiprotophasons increases, which means for a specific time anyhow, an increment in the net put forth field of protophasonic activity, which the affected half-lifer experiences as greater vitality, plus a lowering of the experience of low cold pack temperatures. And Joe says, to say negative ions is redundant. All ions are negative. And she says, maybe I'll see you again. It was rewarding to bring you the spray can. Maybe next time. And Joe says, maybe we can have dinner together. She says, I'll look forward to it. And then, so we've got an answer, but it's kind of a gobbledygook jargon answer about Ubik, right? He asks her another really important question. Who invented Ubik? And she says, a number of responsible half-lifers who Jory threatened, but principally by Ella Runciter. It took her and them working together a long, long time, and there still isn't very much of it available as yet. And then she disappears, right? So Joe now has a can of Ubik, and we're more or less ending the narrative there, except for the very short 17th chapter. And the reason why we jokingly were calling Ubik God in a spray can is because chapter 17 begins not with an advertisement, but with something like a theological declaration. It runs, I am Ubik. Before the universe was, I am. I made the suns. I made the worlds. I created the lives and the places they inhabit. I move them here. I put them there. They go as I say. They do as I tell them. I am the Word, and my name is never spoken, the name which no one knows. I am called Ubik, but that is not my name. I am. I shall always be. And what we get here is a very interesting sort of blend of Jewish and Christian and even Chinese scriptures. Those who have read the Jewish texts and the Gospel of John and the Tao Te Ching will recognize some of those phrases from there. So this is implying that Ubik, although brought into existence in half-life, an artificial life, by Ella Runciter, in a certain sense has always existed. And that's essentially where we end. We don't get an answer fully to these mysteries, but it is very thought-provoking, isn't it?